Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. Man, as usual, a very busy Tuesday. We got to dig straight into today's Q&A. This is with Zach, and Zach is working with an athlete that transitioned from swimming to running, is experiencing a diagnosis of posterior tibial stress syndrome, aka Shin Splints in its common name. Basically, what you're looking at under these situations is a lack of distributed yielding capabilities within the connective tissues. And so there's two extremes. You're either going to see a situation where you're in an overcoming situation with the connective tissues and therefore not getting the distributed yield, and therefore you're relying on a very specific tissue as the source of yielding action, or you've exhausted all of the yielding capabilities of the tissues. And once again, you're relying on a very specific tissue to provide the yielding action. And so you're going to have to determine which situation you're dealing with, which is why you can't cookbook this thing. You can't just say, oh, here's the Shin Splints program and just follow this and you'll be fine. Because if you give somebody the wrong situation, then you have no resolution of symptoms, and then an ongoing problem that doesn't resolve. Once you have resolved symptoms, so Zach did a great job with that, immediately reduce symptoms. What we need to do is restore the distributed yielding capabilities as the athlete is producing force. So there's two parts to this. It's alleviating the symptoms and then restoring the normal movement behaviors that would be associated with performance. And so Zach is now in that phase of the situation. We kind of talk our way through this. This also relates to a video I did recently where we're talking about capturing hip internal rotation, especially for a narrow ISA. We've got a very small space within which we can capture this middle internally rotated high force producing representation. And so we need to do that in a very specific manner. So if you need to, go to the YouTube channel and take a look at, there's a 13 exercise sequence, I believe, that I used to capture a hip internal rotation to transition somebody from, say, ground-based activities towards the return to performance, which will be more high speed, high force like sprinting. So again, check that out. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Please put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so I don't delete it. Also include your question in the email. Everybody have an outstanding Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow.
So I was hoping to kind of run through a little bit like case study for an athlete I had come in for an eval a couple weeks ago. So just like the quick history for her. She's a freshman in high school, came to me with a diagnosis of posterior tibial stress syndrome. Started back in mid-February as she was transitioning from swim to track. Basically to the point of over a week where like she couldn't walk between classes without pain. That persisted for probably about a month and a half before they finally went to see a doctor. She was kind of just doing like rest, heat, compression with the athletic trainer at school, but it wasn't getting better.
Shocker.
She finally wound up with me pretty much like 2 weeks ago to the day. Narrow ISA, pretty much like very headed over on that right side. It's the symptoms are on the right side, and her center of gravity is definitely over that right foot.
Gotcha.
Besides the loss of relative motion, the only really other finding was just like extreme tenderness along the tibial crest, kind of just like along the line.
Yeah, I'm with you. I understand. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
So basically where I started with her was just trying to get center of gravity off the right side. It was actually relatively easy in terms of just like her adaptability, that she pretty much got her relative motions back within the course of one session. I was a bit surprised in a positive way about like the trajectory of her symptoms, in that within a few days she was completely pain-free, like walking around, no pain at night. I guess for the sake of my ego, I'll attribute that to the restoration of relative motion, but I'm sure there's a million other things why that could have happened then.
Yep.
So I guess where I'm hoping to get your opinion and guidance, and this is definitely the part that I get more stuck with for a lot of my patients, is now like the training part of it. As far as she's trying to get back to track, and then she's got soccer in the fall, so there's a lot of running intensive stuff. I'm trying to figure out in terms of like balancing the rates of loading and early versus late and magnitudes of like what's my starting point? How do I know when she's ready to transition from one to the next? Is it based off of symptoms? Is it like a demonstration of competency? Whatever we deem like she needs to be with the movement. So kind of like want to start that conversation a little bit.
Okay. So in your professional opinion, why was she symptomatic in the first place? So like what was the representation that she walked in with? Was it like, was she stuck in like an early representation? Was she living somewhere in the middle, or was she somewhere late?
So she was late on the right side.
Okay. So if you're late, as a representation of the muscular component of the lower leg where she was symptomatic, what would be the representation of the muscle orientation and then the connective tissue behavior in that position? One second. Love you.
So connective tissue would be like an overcoming strategy.
Awesome. And then, so what would be the muscle orientation?
More of like a concentric orientation.
Awesome. Okay. So, and then you restored the relative motion, correct? And she got better really fast.
Yep.
Okay. So what did you change the initial representation from to?
So allowed the musculature in the area to the opportunity to eccentrically orient.
Okay. So you got our middle.
I guess that's early.
You think, and I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying, it's like, okay. So hang on. So did you get her into like an earlier representation, do you think?
Yes.
So that would be concentric yielding.
Right.
Okay. So you gave her a distributed yield. That's efficiency of energy storage and release. So where she was before was in a situation where the connective tissues were too stiff to promote that. And so she had to use whatever she had to create the yielding action, because you still have to have it somewhere, right? And then she just decided that, okay, well, let's use the periosteum. Let's just use that as my yielding strategy, right? As my yielding action, instead of having this distributed connective tissue behavior, right? And so when I get the focal stress, that's why you get the pain. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So do you think she's going to have to use those tissues when she decides that she's going to be a land mammal instead of a water-based animal, right? And she's going to have to bounce across the ground. Do you think she's going to have to use those tissues too?
Yes.
Okay. But what you want is the ability to distribute this yield, right? And then change muscle orientation, middle, and then use the late. So I still got to go early, middle, late. Okay. She's already got a late representation that you know that she's probably going to be able to capture. I just don't want her to get so biased in one direction that's all she does. So you've captured early. Now you got to teach her how to change muscle orientation, restore normal connective tissue behaviors in that middle representation where the higher force is going to be applied, right? Okay. So you always want to make sure that she can recapture her earlies. And then you got to start moving her towards middle. Now, she's narrow ISA, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does she have a really big middle space?
No.
Okay. So that means you got very little time to expose her to middle representations. Okay. She's going to run across the ground.
She is.
Perfect. So how long do you think her middle is going to be if she's running across the ground and she's narrow ISA?
Brief.
Correct. So now you know you have a timing issue as you're trying to restore her middle representations. So not that you would ignore maximum efforts in force production, right? That's kind of important, but how you expose her to that now becomes the important part of the strategy. Okay. Do you want her to do box squats with chains on the bar?
No.
Why not?
because that's going to hold her down in middle of that force.
It's going to prolong the middle representation, right?
Yep.
Okay. So not that you're not going to worry about force production, but again, it's like you just don't want things that are going to expand that time frame, right? So you work in a shorter amplitude, right? And then you gradually induce the connective tissue behavior from an energy standpoint. So it's like you're not going to take the rubber band, you're not going to try to pull it back as hard as you possibly can at first. You got to teach her how to oscillate within a smaller range, and then you expand the oscillations, always keeping the time constraint reduced. Did you happen to see the video of the 13 exercise progression that I just posted recently?
I did not.
Boy, and you're on this call. Whew.
I'll see myself.
Okay, thumbs up. Who saw the 13 exercises in sequence? Everybody but Zach. Okay, cool.
I was gonna say I couldn't believe you could move like that.
that I can move like that?
Yeah, I was like, wow. Okay.
So Dale, inside secret here is those are the only 13 moves that I can actually do.
I was impressed. So I was like, okay.
No, so Zach, so what I did is I did a representation of how you would capture the middle representation. So capturing internal rotation in a progressive manner in regards to force production, and then the time constraint, and then the element of propulsion.
Well, that seems perfect for this conversation. So
Well, it kind of is. Now, here's the thing. Don't turn it into a cookbook, because it's not a cookbook. What I did is I just gave representations of what you may need. And so if you can consistently get her relative motions available to her, then you're capturing this early representation. Now you got to teach her how to produce force. My other concern is the fact that she's a swimmer, and if she's a really good swimmer, that might make her less of a runner.
I think that is just kind of like a winter activity for her. She's much more geared towards the track and soccer side of things, and so I think she just does that to keep herself
good. And you've got a much better shot. You've got a much better shot at restoring the force production then. But in all seriousness, it's like to save us an element of time and discussion, watch that, okay, and then maybe come back with questions, because it will stimulate thought. That's the goal of that video. It's not to tell people what to do. It's just to give you a representation of, oh, this is how I might capture that middle in a very small space.